Welcome to the Reality Revolution. I'm your host, Brian Scott. Today's episode is on the nature of error. As a metaphysical podcast, I think it's important that we discuss error, failure. If anyone could live for even a year without making a mistake or error, they should be condemned for not even trying. Everyone who has ever lived has made mistakes and errors and knows the bitter taste of failure more than once. But to say that failure and error is common is not the same as saying failure is good or desirable. It happens. What's done cannot be undone. If failure or error has any purpose at all, it is only to help us to learn from mistakes and grow to a greater wisdom, greater confidence, greater achievement. Do you ever stop to think about the number of people that are in the world and the complicated relationships that exist among them, from the heads of nations to the next door neighbors? Do you ever realize the number of times each day that errors might have resulted from these relationships, but didn't? Sometimes the news may make you think that the whole world is one glorious error, gigantic failure. But you really know better than this. You know that millions upon millions of people live orderly lives marked by steady progress towards successful relationships, with all the chances there are for people to make failures and errors. It really is a wonder that many people don't make a mess of things. Every day, almost every hour of every day, we are faced with error in some form. If we are to be free of these errors, it is necessary for us to understand the nature of error. Eventually, in meditation, we will become so consciously one with God that error will never come near us. It will fade away automatically, even as we approach it. Until that time, however, let's not hesitate or fear to talk about the nature of error and what to do about it when we see evidence of it. Everyone, regardless of what branch of metaphysics they have studied, has accepted, if only intellectually, the unreal nature of error. Therefore, in the working out of problems, it becomes necessary for us to gain as much understanding as possible of the unreal nature of error so that it can be met and dissolved instantaneously. The one concept that took me a while to understand is that error, failure, mistakes are never a person, place, thing, or condition. Always when error appears to us, it appears as a person, place, thing, or condition. It may appear as disease, that is, as some kind of localized condition, and that is what fools us. We go to work on the condition and thereby make it a reality. Error never appears as error. It always appears in some form that will ensnare the unwary. If error would only appear as error, all of us would be free. If it would only say to us, steal a diamond ring or commit adultery, we would be so safe from it because we would never succumb to such temptations. But it never appears in such ways. It always appears as a brilliant diamond attracting us, or a beautiful woman or man tempting us, and we do not realize that the apparent desirable form is error. All that we see is a beautiful form that error has assumed. That error appears to be, that error appears as. The metaphysician who is wise and alert, however, will not only recognize that error always appears as person, place, thing, or condition, but that good also appears as person, place, thing, or condition. And every time they see any form of good, a good person, a generous, kindly, or philanthropic one, we will instantly recognize this is God. These are the qualities of God appearing in or as or through this person. If the metaphysician is able to interpret or translate even the good forms, they will not get tangled up in personality. They will not be so attached to any person that the loss of that person might almost drive them mad or the fall from grace of any person might so disappoint them as to cause heartbreak. Even while appreciating a good person, we must look behind the form and recognize that it is God appearing as some form of good. It is really the presence of love expressed. We do not express this verbally, but that is the consciousness in which we must live. According to Neville Goddard, everything is you pushed out. So when I look at an audience, standing and speaking to a large audience, I know that all that I see is actually God, but God appearing as persons, and God appearing as cooperation, love, joy, peace, and dominion. It is all God appearing as God appearing as a person, as a friend, as a teacher, as a student. God appearing as light, truth, and love, all infinite and individual forms. Everything of good nature that appears to me should immediately be translated, I recognize as God. Thou art the very presence of God appearing to me as good. But on the other hand, we must be equally alert. When error appears, error is not a person. Error is never a person. And to work on an evil or disagreeable person is to become so involved in the human scene that we may have a hard time bringing out a healing or transformation in our reality. In the same way, error is never a diseased person, even though it appears that way. Therefore, if we work on the disease or the person, we shall find that our transformational power is not satisfactory. When confronted with an evil person or situation, or with a sick person, we must learn to translate this person or condition into impersonal error, just as we learn to translate the good person into God. Take as an illustration the coming together of a streetcar track. See the tracks coming together. But because you know that the streetcar tracks do not actually come together, but only look as if they do, you're able immediately to recognize that appearance as illusion. You know there is no such condition. You know that what you are seeing is merely an optical illusion, and so you are able to at once wipe out any fear of the wrong condition of the tracks or any sense of danger there might be. All error, then, is hypnotism. Let me call to your mind the illustration of the hypnotist in vaudeville act whose subject has been induced to believe that they are being followed by a white poodle. So as a member of the audience, you might attempt to help the subject rid themselves of the white poodle. You would be in the same state of mesmerism in which they are. Because you are not hypnotized, you know that there is no white poodle there. The claim is not a white poodle. The claim is hypnotism. The minute you know that the man is free, why are they free? Because the error has been uncovered. It has been seen. It has been recognized for its nothingness. Hypnotism cannot produce a white poodle. It can only produce an illusory appearance of the white poodle. Just as the hypnotist on the platform makes his subject believe in the presence of a white poodle or some fantasy object, so the hypnotism in this world would make us all believe in and accept the appearance of evil people, places, conditions, or circumstances. However, if in reality there is any such condition, rest assured there is no God. Do not ever believe that there is an infinite power called divine love, and at the same time, disease or sin in the world. You cannot have both. You have to make your choice. Either you come into the realization that there is the Creator, God, a principle of the universe, or you will be battling disease, death, and sin all your life. But when you see that God is the substance, the law, the infinite intelligence in the form of all being, then you must also agree that sin, disease, death, lack, limitation, poverty, unemployment, and homelessness, all of these things are illusion. Throughout the centuries, as we have established, human sense has built up what can be termed materia medica beliefs, theological beliefs, and other materialistic beliefs which have become so strong that they act upon people in somewhat the same manner as the hypnotist acts upon the unwary. In other words, You go out into the wind or sit in a draft and catch cold. Why? The wind or the draft cannot give you a cold. A physician once said to me, he thought about it, that the body does not know whether it is out in the open air or in a tightly closed room, or whether the air is a draft coming in through a window or door. If the body is not aware of this, it must catch cold because the mind in some way has accepted that there's some law that they can catch cold. Check out my episode on The Whole World Believes a Lie by Joseph Murphy, where he's stating the basic principle behind this. You may counter and claim that a newborn baby placed in a draft can easily catch cold, or a newborn baby can eat some peanut butter and have a peanut butter allergy. But does that mean that the newborn baby has thought of the cold or allergy, or does it rather mean that this thought is so universal and powerful as to be almost mesmeric, impinging itself on that baby almost from the moment it is born, and that thereby the baby becomes the victim of that which it does not even know? For that reason, in this work, for what we are doing, we use words which, although inadequate, are up to the stage of our unfoldment. The only words I know which describe the real nature of error, which is hypnotism, mesmerism, illusion, or suggestion. From now on, when you see a quote-unquote sinful or diseased person, immediately lift your thought to this realization: I cannot be fooled by this. This is the appearance. But actually, it's nothing but a hypnotic suggestion, a mesmeric suggestion, or a universal belief that is appearing to me as a sick or sinful person. If you can do this, you'll have an instantaneous healing or transformation in your reality. As you meet with error in your experience, and you are meeting it daily within your own body or business or through your patients or friends, you might as well know what it is you are meeting so that you will know how to deal with it. Although when you attain oneness, you may be able to drop out of your thought entirely any knowledge you may have had as to the nature of error. The knowledge of the nature of error is relatively unimportant when you reach the point where you are completely one with the universal mind that is also what they refer to as Christ Jesus. And it may be that some of you, even at this moment, are on such a high spiritual plane, of course, especially in the reality revolution, that when you close your eyes, go to the center of your being and find yourself one with God, as God. All phases of error and discord disappear without the word error ever coming into your thought. As a rule, however, when I am first presented with any form of error, as I have been taught and have learned from the Joseph Murphys and the Neville Goddards, when someone texts me or writes me an email, or I do a one-on-one session with someone, I have found it helpful to realize quickly that I'm not dealing with a person or a condition. I'm dealing only with a suggestion that has found lodgment in my consciousness and would try to make me do something about it. When I have done that, I have done all that is necessary in the way of treatment. After that, I can sit down, find my peace at the center of God consciousness, and go on from there. But unless the error is recognized as hypnotism, illusion, trance, first, the temptation may likely come in. This is a pretty kettle of fish. What am I going to do about a serious disease like this? This is an uncurable cancer. How can I possibly think of a way to cure this? Or what am I going to do with a person this far gone? Or with this person who is so close to death? This last temptation seems to be particularly strong when I deal with elderly people who are involved, because the temptation of the whole world is to think, oh, what can you expect? It is that moment when it is necessary to be alert to realize that in the kingdom of God there is no such thing as a newborn baby or an elderly person. From the newest born baby to the eldest individual on earth, there is in reality nothing but the presence of God appearing to you in time and in space. Everything is you pushed out. That's what it really means. There is nothing but the fullness of the Creator expressing itself, and every one of us must express that fullness. All that the Father has is ours. Son, thou art ever with me, and all that I have is thine. Was this addressed to a person of any particular age? I don't think so. I think it was addressed to you and to me. So when you are presented with cases of unborn children or newborn children or middle age or old age, remember that you are not dealing with a person, a place, or a thing. On the positive side, you're dealing with God appearing as individual being, and God is just as much God at 100 years of age as at 20. On the negative side, however, you are dealing with appearance, with mortality, with a suggestion of selfhood apart from God. Therefore, don't let yourself be trapped into treating a person or a disease, or into believing that you are dealing with sick or quote-unquote sinful people. Stop such erroneous practice and watch the miracle. Remember, this is a universal truth, and it must prove itself in your practice. In the kingdom of the Creator, there is no such thing as error, and so it is useless even to try to account for it. I mean, even Ra in the Law of One says there are no mistakes. On the contrary, admit that this error is only an appearance coming to you. It is merely a temptation to believe in a selfhood apart from God, a separation from the oneness. It makes no difference whether you choose to say, oh, well, this is just a suggestion, or this is hypnotism suggesting what appears to be a white poodle, or this is a temptation to believe in a selfhood apart from God, or whether you find other terms that you prefer, as long as you understand the essence of this truth and realize that you will never be called upon to heal a sick person or to cure somebody's poverty, because there is no such thing in the kingdom of God. Never forget that this life of yours is God, and if it appears to you to be young or old, sick or well, evil or good, that is just the Creator appearing to you, but incorrectly interpreted by you, and you are the one who must reinterpret the scene. There is no use going about saying, oh, I know there is no old age or sickness or evil in heaven. But what about earth? Heaven and earth are not two different places. Heaven and earth are one and the same. Earth is our mental concept of heaven, and heaven is our real awareness of the earth. In other words, heaven is the earth correctly understood. Now follow this carefully. Here are two important points. Right identification, which means the Creator appearing as individual life, the One appearing as many, or God, life, appearing as individual being, and reinterpretation, which means looking at sick, sinning, dying humanity and translating that appearance through the realization that inasmuch as the Creator is all, this is part of the allness of God, the one of God, which is being misseen, coming as a false suggestion which must be reinterpreted by your imagination. These two important points you must carry with you from morning to night and night to morning. Correctly identifying and interpreting something that you see. Reinterpret everything you see, hear, taste, touch, and smell. Reinterpret it. Reimagine it. Translate it into its original state of perfection, which is Godhood. Practice correctly identifying, knowing that all that appears to you is the Creator appearing. God appearing as individual man or woman or child. God appearing as the plant or the animal. What the human eye sees is the misconception of the divine. What the human eye sees, or what the human ear hears, is the false picture presented by this thing called trance, hypnotism, illusion, or suggestion. The same illusion that makes the tracks come together in the distance, or the mirage in the desert, or the sky sit on the mountains. It makes no difference what name or term that you use for error Only be sure that you are not trying to be so absolute that you're unwilling to reinterpret with your imagination what is appearing to you in any human scene. For the serious student, the most important teaching from Neville Goddard and Joseph Murphy is reimagining a situation by changing it in your imagination. Because it explains clearly that the entire human picture is mesmeric suggestion. And it is this suggestion of a selfhood apart from God that you are called upon to reimagine. After you've practiced reimagining for a while, it becomes automatic for you as you see people and events to translate or reimagine them. And then you really see them as they are without any mental gyrations or illusions. There's one reason so little treatment is needed. The very moment a person, place, or condition presents itself to you, immediately should come to the realization, I know you. You are the creator appearing. And if it is a negative appearance, you can reinterpret it by remembering this is but a false sense of the creator appearing. This is a suggestion, the human sense of things, and it is purely illusory. Thereby, you learn not to fight or battle reality, but gradually to come into oneness with reality. The nature of error has never been a pleasant subject to teach in metaphysics. Many truth students do not like to hear about it or talk about it. I don't want to talk about error. I know a number of people didn't even click on this episode because they want to spiritually bypass the idea of error. They would much rather spend time talking about how God is lovely and wonderful and read positive affirmations. And I assure you that I too am one of those who would much rather focus on the positive than adhere to the main theme of the Creator to the exclusion of this or other aspects. But I have learned there is danger in doing that. There are too many people in the spiritual world who are perfectly willing to talk about the oneness of God at the same moment that error is destroying them. There are any number of people in the spiritual world who are indulging in various forms of error. They justify themselves by saying, well, it hasn't any power, yet they're indulging in it. So obviously, it must have some power. Nevertheless, they look you right in the face and say, well, it has no power. What are you afraid of? But at the same time, they are claiming it has no power. And they are not afraid of it. It still has enough power to attract them to it. And you arrive at the place where you can look at every suggestion that presents itself to you. And when you have reached such a high state of consciousness that every error coming to you and your attention drops away immediately, and you reimagine it properly, then you no longer need to take into consideration the nature of error. Most of us, however, have a long road to travel before that goal is reached, me included. As a matter of fact, probably most practitioners, that is, the spiritually enlightened ones, most likely the people listening to this episode at some time or other, has so lifted up in consciousness that when people come to them, the error just drops away without their taking any conscious thought about it. There are numerous stories of people that have gone and talked to spiritual gurus and practitioners simply about God, who might have a cancerous lesion or cyst, and just being around that person, they walk away and the growth entirely disappears. It happens all the time. In those little moments with the guru, this practitioner elevates themselves to such a state of spiritual consciousness that they are no longer of the condition that the man was presenting. In that purified state of consciousness, they don't have to declare, this is a suggestion, because to consciousness, it was clearly evident that it was only a suggestion. It is not always necessary for you to make the statement, oh, this is just a negative suggestion, or this is just illusion or hypnotism, or it's not true, or that's not a person, place, or thing. I do not mean that at all. I do mean that it is necessary to arrive at the state of consciousness in which any form of error is instantly recognized as only suggestion, and to stop giving treatments to people or conditions. Train yourself to know that you are never dealing with a sick person. You are never dealing with a poor person. You're never dealing with a disease. You're dealing with the universal beliefs. My own uncle was a victim of such a belief, and he became seriously ill. And for a while, the family thought he would not survive. But he assured them, please, don't be fearful of my passing. I'm not going to die. And he didn't die. We hear stories about that all the time. The majority of people accept universal beliefs at their face value, and then their life experience is influenced by them. We, however, must train ourselves not to accept world beliefs of world consciousness. Do not accept the suggestion that you are only going to live for a certain period of time. Don't accept that. A disease is a dangerous or serious condition that can't be cured or healed. Remember, whatever you're experiencing is only a suggestion. Any belief can be set aside, but a law of God cannot be set aside. The law of God is life eternal. The law of God is all that I have is thine. All the infinity, all the immortality, that cannot be set aside. But by becoming a law unto your own being, through the realization that yours is a creator-given dominion, the belief that you must die at any specific time can be set aside. Whether it is a doctor who says it, whether it is the Bible, whether it is the stars that say it. God gave man dominion over the things of the earth, over the waters, over the stars, over the heavens. God gave you its own individualized being, dominion. But you must consciously exercise it and not sit back and let the universal consciousness act upon you. Remember that these beliefs, these universal beliefs, these universal states that are so negative, that are so disastrous, whether medical or spiritual, do act upon you until you consciously set them aside. In other words, every day of the year, you're supposed to be growing older. And unless you are consciously handling that belief and realizing my life is God, therefore I am ageless, you do come under this human belief about age, and you will come to that place which is known as death or the change of life. And eventually you will show forth signs of age because you will pass through all the various phases of life in accordance with medical beliefs, until you yourself consciously take possession of your life through your God-given dominion and realize, no, my life is God. Age and change are but medical beliefs or suggestions and do not have to operate in or upon or through my consciousness. I'm reminded of the Psalms. By the way, check out my Psalms meditation. Thousands may fall at your left hand and tens of thousands at your right. If they do not take hold of this universal truth, everyone has the right, either by choice or through ignorance, of going through life in his own way. You have the right to take hold of your reality and create and determine its course. And you do it in this way. When any form of error appears, be sure that you recognize it for what it is, so that it does not fool you. Do not let it cause you to accept a sickness or any sort of lack and try to reform or heal them. If you do that, you will be the blind leading the blind. The only difference between a practitioner or guru or teacher and a patient or student is that the practitioner or guru cannot be hypnotized into believing that the student or patient is a human being. The practitioner knows that regardless of appearances, that their student or patient is God appearing as individual being, and the practitioner will not accept anything less than that fact. In the same way, the practitioner will not accept a sick person, a diseased person, or an impoverished person, their response always is, I know you. Get behind me, thee Satan. You are just a false sense tempting me into accepting you as a reality. I know you, so you can take off your false face. By reimagining, you truly come into a state of consciousness in which life becomes not a mental process, but a looking out and seeing the Creator, seeing that all is well with the world. You can find all episodes of The Reality Revolution at therealityrevolution.com. Check out my art at www.newearth.art. If you see a comment that doesn't have the blue check mark, it is not me. I see God in you. I see the Creator in you, and I see all error corrected. And welcome to the Reality Revolution.